Okay, welcome back for the next session of our training program for today. I'm looking forward again to this training session that's going to be delivered by Ethan. Ethan will be talking with us about how to create a podcast. Now, Ethan's currently been running a podcast which is called the Deep Podcast. Ethan, you can go into the acronym and everything about that podcast in a moment. I've seen you start from the humble beginnings with the podcast. We've seen what you've been able to do with the podcast, but the content that you're creating is fantastic. Now, for those of you who may not know, Ethan comes from Birmingham. He lives there with his family, and they worship at a church, the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Birmingham called Perry Beaches. Ethan also is a graduate from Peace, the 2019 class. In fact, Ethan, Dougie, Natalie, Denise, and that you'll be hearing from today, they all graduated from the same class, and we ran a session focusing on how to do digital mission work. And we've seen, as you've heard, Dougie as he's presented already, Ethan's presenting podcasting right now. Ethan came there. He took a year, he took a placement year from university to attend Peace in 2019. And since going back to university, he's had a different outlook on life ever since. He's currently in his final year of studies, an undergrad at Coventry University, studying sports therapy. And he's also serving as the youth leader of his local church and involved in a few other ministries. As I've mentioned, Ethan is the host, the creator of the Deep Podcast. I believe that God is the overarching guidance and foundation of everything that you're doing. But Ethan, I'm going to hand over to you. I'm looking forward to this. So yeah, I'm going to hand straight over to you and take it away.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much, Craig, for having me. Hey, Peace family, alumni. Good to see you guys there. I know we haven't had much interactions, but nonetheless, it's good to come together to share what we've been up to in our journey. So we're just gonna go into the podcast. Yeah, we'll explain as we go along. Indeed, it had been humble beginnings. We're gonna go through the whole thing. So I'm just gonna share my screen, and then we're gonna start there. Okay. Let me just go to this one. All right. So if you have your phone out, if you can take a note of this. If you search for the podcast, if you search the Deep Podcast, I don't know why it doesn't come up. It won't come up. So you'd have to actually search the Deep Podcast official intro, and then you can find that on Spotify. We're available on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Anchor FM, Google Podcasts, and other ones that are, I guess, less popular and less common, hence why they're not there. We are on Instagram and Facebook, the Deep Podcast, at Deep Podcast, and my personal social media platform page just on Facebook. Before we start, I'm gonna play the intro for you guys. It's only like about a minute long, and then we'll go into the whole. Well, it's about a minute, almost 2 minutes actually, 1 minute 45. So you guys can kind of hear it, and then you can go on and subscribe, and then we'll get into the whole thing in it, because I think this kind of depicts the whole purpose of the podcast. Does the Bible ever seem boring to you? Do you have questions that you think, I don't have answers to? Does the Bible just seem as an old fiction book? With the growth of secularism today, 50% of young people are leaving the church, and this has caused major concern for the future generation. We know that life happens. Life can get difficult, can get hard, can get tough going, and can get very discouraging. And so we sat down and we asked the question, how can we inspire, how can we encourage, and how can we ignite the love for God and His word in this generation? So we came up with the Deep Podcast. So welcome to the Deep Podcast with me, your host, Ethan Posner. No sermons, no long lectures, just real life experiences. It's more than just a podcast. It's real, it's deep, and it's powerful. And it might just encourage you to consider a life with Jesus Christ. It is our desire that you join us on this journey to discovery as we launch out into the deep, into the Word of God. Okay, so that's the official introduction or trailer of what the podcast is all about. That was in the early beginnings. I still need to go back and make some few changes to some of that. But that's what it is, and that's what the whole thing is gonna be. And we're gonna break that down as we go along as well. If you have any questions, please do feel free to pop them in, and I guess we'll go through them later in as well. So I see a question, is this the intro to every single episode? So the music is the official. So every time you hear the music, like you know that's the podcast. So it's at the beginning of every single episode. If you actually no, you should go forward and listen to the episodes. You'll be able to figure it out. So not that one, but there's the music is definitely there. So my kind of background, how deep came to the thing. Maybe some of you may have seen the Why They Did That podcast. With Dean and Christian. Now Dean is an ex-Peace graduate. I think it's 2010, if I'm correct. So Dean is an ex-Peace graduate as well, and those guys came up with a podcast, I think about almost 2 years ago now. And I was listening to their podcast. I always look forward to it. And I think after Peace, it dawned on me that every single podcast, it was those guys, Ivan Myers, there was the Voice of Prophecy, and I realized that pretty much all the podcasts are America. So that kind of said, what have we got here in England? And after Peace, we had a study, or rather a presentation on digital discipleship. So it was like, everything seems to be America. Why isn't there nothing in England? So I did some research and I looked at different things, and then it was like, there was pretty much nothing. I know the ones that I have were not especially, well, some of them were Christians, but they were not, focusing on the fringes message, so to speak, to spread the gospel to everyone in the world. It was just kind of like a little bit self-centered. So, but I wanted something to be a little bit different to that. So I thought, let me see if I can do something. And then in the same time, I've just finished Peace. I'm going to placement. And then I'm having these crazy thoughts. This was before COVID-19 came on the scene. So my friend sent me a series that was going on in France, in Paris. So I speak French. So my friend thought, wow, Ethan, you need to listen to this. It was by a guy, he's American. He came over for a week, and then he was doing a youth week of prayer. His name is Michael Polite, and the title of the series was Follow Me as I Follow Christ. And so he was using social media, imagery, and all that kind of stuff to bring about a message. And I listened to that, and during that whole presentations, the whole week, I think it was like towards the last 3, he challenged the youth to create a platform that they can use to advance God's movement forward. And he said, dream big, think big. You don't have to be limited by anything. Just think of something that you want to do for God to make movement for God. And as I was listening to that, I was actually impacted, and I thought, yeah, I can try this. So I remember going home and then having to think about this whole thing, and I'm listening to the podcast by these guys, and a few other kind of things online. And then I thought, why not create something? So with much prayer, much thoughts, I remember speaking about it with a few different people, and eventually the podcast launched in May of last year. May last year we launched, and that's kind of our current social media page on Instagram. So being inspired by a lot of different things, doing some research, watch a lot of videos, etc. And so that's how it all really came about. Our first episode, When God's Vision is Bigger, Grace was the guest. Grace, I think, is also, well, I know she's also a Peace graduate. And so I got her to, and I know obviously Douglas had just mentioned her in the previous presentation. And so I did a podcast with her. And I remember through the the whole thing. I mean, I'm going to go into how we actually prepare for the podcast in a second. But remember, as we were recording, Grace, we're talking about Exodus. You can go and check that out as well. I mean, I'm going to mention some of these, and obviously you can go on the platform. They're all there. So Grace began talking about Moses. So in Exodus 4, Moses just had a burning bush experience, and God wants him to go back to Egypt. And Moses says to the Lord, "Oh my Lord, I am not eloquent, neither before nor since you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of speech and slow of tongue." He's complaining about his tongue. He's complaining about what he lacks. And I remember going through that experience, man, I'm not eloquent enough. I don't really speak well. I don't really want to do this. But he says, "Oh Lord, please send by the hand of whomever you may send." And then this was the game changer. "And you shall take this rod in your hand, with which you shall do the sign." And I remember Grace really saying, "Use what you have." I mean, we were recording for the episode, but I was getting impacted like never before. Use what you have in your hand. And at the end of the day, your mobile phone is literally what you need to record. We're going to go through that in a second. So use what you have. And that was basically the beginning of the whole thing. Now, how did the deep name come about? This is the story itself. So I remember I was asking my friends different names, and nothing of it seems to kind of say what I really wanted to kind of make the episode be about. So one morning, my friends and I, we're reading The Great Controversy, which we have been doing for a while. And we're reading the story of John Wycliffe. Now, GC page 88, paragraph 1 says this. Ellen White says, "Wycliffe's words were fulfilled. He lived to place in the hands of his countrymen the most powerful of all weapons against Rome, to give them the Bible, the heaven-appointed agent to liberate, enlighten, and evangelize the people." Now, so in that morning, it's like light bulb just went off. It's like, that is the name of the podcast. The Bible, the heaven-appointed agent to liberate, enlighten, and evangelize the people. So the name became LEEP. Okay, liberate, enlighten, evangelize, and people. Okay, so that was the name. Did some Google search. It wasn't exactly a good thing to have on there. There was a lot of connotations with that LEEP thing. So we were like, okay, no. And then we're like, let's think of another synonym for liberate. And the one that came to our mind was deep, delivered. So it became DEEP, delivered, enlightened, and evangelize the people. So we just twist that little name there, liberate, and we put delivered. And that's how we came with the word deep. So it is an acronym for delivered, enlightened, and evangelize their people. Okay. So that's kind of the background where that came from. There it is. And my good friend who was going to become, I'm not sure if she's going to be coming on later, Natalie, awesome. She helped with the development of the logo. And as you can see in the middle of the microphone pill is the cross. And so that was our focus point there, to make sure that everything that we do is in light with Christ and the cross there. So these different strings of D, E, E, P also kind of gave us a foundation on how our podcast is going to work in terms of the content production, which I'm going to get to in a second. So the aim is a Bible-based show that brings deliverance through real life experiences, enlightens on biblical topics, and evangelizes the people for the kingdom of God. Our greatest purpose, the greatest desire of this podcast is that you will be inspired, encouraged, and most importantly, develop a love for God and his word. That's a typo, they should be in capital. But that's our two aim and purpose. So our target audience, the youth. So that's kind of that age, even in church, kind of 16 to 35 age range, because they're the most people who are most likely to listen to the podcast. We're going to show some stats on that as well in just a short while. So the target was the youth. Being a youth leader, I wanted to reach those kind of guys. Then I had to narrow that down, 18, university age. I consider I'm also university, so I thought that kind of age is really where things happen. Because as I look at the statistics, about 50% of young people who go to university Adventist, almost 50% of them don't become Adventists after that. So those numbers, they were quite worrying as well. So I wanted to kind of do something in that age gap. So what I had to do was to make a list of topics that will interest the young people, youth-related topics, and so that's what we did. And then the thing that I had to do again, find guests. Okay, so if you want to start a podcast, you want to think about who's your target audience. Trying to narrow that down. For me, I had to kind of imagine a young person at my church as I want to reach this person. So that became my I guess my, what do you call them? Ooh, you know when you have like the word just escaped my mind. So you want to have a decoy, I guess. I can't remember the other word. Yeah, you want to have someone that's like that, like a character. That's it. So you want to have a character. I think somebody's helping with the word. Okay. Do you have to have guests? Okay, good question. So for me, I think it was pretty important to have guests because I didn't want to make it like me giving a long discourse or trying to make it like a sermon style or anything like that. Because I know that I can get really passionate about topics. So I wanted to kind of make it conversational. That's why I find it easy to have guests on there. I felt like it flew a little better as well having guests. And the podcast that I listened to had guests. So I thought that worked for me. So you want to have the guests, and praise God that we have a platform where we can actually have guests and use each other. So find guests as well was one of the things that I had that you might want to do. You gotta establish the mission, the gospel of the kingdom to be preached to all the world as a witness to all nations, and then the end will come. So how does your podcast fulfill this? That was a question you have to ask, because there's a lot of great podcasts out there, but even though they're Christian, there seems to be kind of self-centered. Okay, you were just talking about this for the sake of talking about Christian topics, but the aim, it has to that you want to win people. So that has to be the foundation of the podcast. And as you do that, you find that it actually comes in your favor. It is a working of spread the good news of salvation that we are brought near to the Savior. So you think the podcast is about other people, but you find that it's actually coming back to you as well. It is in the working to spread the good news of salvation that we are brought near to the Savior. So as you do this, you find out that you are also being edified. I mean, I have the podcast. I think I'm trying to put content for certain people, but I get impacted on a whole new level. So we did one with campus ministry, is what with Chantal Tomlinson. And in that episode, I remember her saying these words. She quoted this phrase, and she says, "Strength to resist evil is best gained by aggressive service." That was the key for the student life. If you're a student and you wanted to kind of live a life that please God, then you want to be about His business, because that's the way you can resist all these temptations, etc. So, and I remember going through that stuff, and I thought, wow, so I'm getting this, I'm learning and I'm understanding. So you learn a lot more, especially when you do when you have guests on there, because they give you a different perspective on things as well. So that was ASC Camp Ministry. So I think Douglas has already been through this. If you're in his last presentation. So when you look at the statistics, 96% of internet users have social platform or messenger service in the past month. That 96%, that's the same statistics of internet users in the whole of UK. So 96% of households in England have internet access. This was 2000, this is beginning before the pandemic. So right now, I can imagine that's probably gone up higher. So that's how saturated the internet is within our society. And you see that 77% are also on social media. So people are on there. So just talk about the statistics of why I decided to kind of focus on the youth. Well, the biggest consumers of internet, social media, you see is that 18 to 34 age range. Once you go past that, you don't really have that many people who use the internet and social media, especially. So that's why I wanted to find out. Most of the youth in our church, it is that. Most people are in that age range. So if you want to focus on where to reach the people, especially the youth, that's where they are. The adults, you probably won't find them online, but the young people are there, and you can see that it's quite big. So this is just breaking down the population stage. 6 or 7 million by January 2020, so last year statistics. But as you do your research, this is what we find actually. So you see that people want to watch video stuff. People want to watch. There's a lot of watching, a lot of listening. So if you see Douglas in terms of writing, people don't read that much if we're real. Okay, so you see that don't even make you on this, but you see that podcasting is actually coming up at 28%. So there's it still needs to grow. There's still room for that to develop because now people want to listen and watch stuff instead of reading. So capitalizing on what people are doing on what the trend seems to be like will also be to your advantage. So there's not a lot of podcasts. This is just podcasts in general, but if we look at Christian podcasts, it probably won't be anything like that either. So there's a lot of room for us to get on that as well. So I talked about earlier that the acronyms all have a special kind of topic that we go into. So delivered there, we're talking about personal experiences and people's personal testimonies as we go through that. So this is the story talking about how God saved, how God came through for your life. And so you want to kind of have different outlook and approaches on it. The E for enlighten. So this is once again bringing enlightenment and shedding light, giving an insight into a biblical topic. So there we talk about biblical leadership. What does that mean? So shedding some light on that. And then as well on that section, Douglas showed you guys that Douglas and I have been collaborating on the insight. So we collaborate together. So you want to probably start thinking of someone you can collaborate with. So you guys can use each other's strengths. So we also do online live streams on Instagram every 2 weeks as well. And that's been a huge blessing. The reason why we do these is because we're not just doing them for the sake of doing them. We actually want to do them because our target is to see who's interested and bring them out from Instagram and actually do one-to-one Bible study. That's the whole point we're doing it. We're doing it because we want to bring those relationships from Instagram and we've been so blessed because now we're studying with so many different people as a result of this. So people ask us questions in live, we follow it up, and now we're so blessed and we're going through that journey of studying with the people individually as well. So that's our goal. Our goal is not just to put our content, but actually how can we use this to actually bring somebody from a one-to-one experience? So that's what we've been also discovering. In terms of evangelism, the Great Commission, go ye therefore, teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and the Holy Ghost, teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I have commanded you. And Lord, I am with you always, even unto the end of the age. So with this, the commission, it becomes the pinnacle or the most important pillar within the podcast. How is my podcast fulfilling this? Once again, is the question. And is it teaching people? Is it bringing them closer to Jesus? And I guess that needs to be the motivator as you think about going about and doing it. So you want to kind of think about it and how that ties within the Advent message as well. So right now we find that actually a lot of people don't know how to do Bible studies or they're not confident to do it. They might do it, but they haven't got the tools to do so. And so Insight Blog and I came together and we decided to run a training program on how to do Bible study in a digital age. So we've been doing that. Today is our third session. We'll be doing that this evening later on. And that's been a great experience to see how we can use this platform to reach people as well. But once again, you don't want to just have a podcast, but you want to collaborate with people and see how you can even make more an impact as well. So once again, it's for people, for everybody as well. Just hearing different people's stories will actually help you on that as well. So we're gonna go into this thing about. Okay, I'm gonna skip this. This is just where we are. Okay, so once you've kind of thought about what you want to do, you've put programs on the ground and you've got different episodes, you have guests, or if you don't have guests, and as you begin to work on the whole production of it, what happens with the recording? Now, we're in lockdown, we don't have a studio. What did we do? Now, I'm going to give you guys some stuff that I'm going to show you what I did. I'm still trying to find a better way to do things and more efficient. And And I hope that when you guys go off, you find a better way. Please do let me know how to be more efficient in it, because it can be time consuming. You can try again. But let me show with you what I did. So the recording. So I first bought a little mic because I looked into the stuff and I thought everything's expensive and I can't afford it. So I thought I used my phone initially and the audio was okay. The audio was actually really good. But I wanted to kind of start editing it on my laptop. So I wanted to have something a little bit more, I guess, powerful. But your phone works equally as well. So I'll record, because this is a long process. So I'll record it. So, okay. So yeah, this is what I had at the beginning. Okay. And I'll attach this to to my lamp so I can have a sort of a stand. I mean, it's pretty crazy. I know Craig is sitting in the background, probably smiling and laughing right now. But it was pretty simple, okay? And then, so I'll have my Bible there. I'll have my script, as you can see on my laptop. I'm going to show you a better picture actually after that. So the bottom picture on the left is what I bought, invest in a better mic, I guess, and some better headset as well. As you go, you find out you develop into things. So I have my script. I have my Bible and I have my mic, and I also have my drive where I will be recording everything. Okay, so I've got my stuff. Now I've been using, it's just called Garageband. Okay, so this is what I used to edit. And so if I can just go through this quickly, this will be my track. So as we're talking, I'll be recording through here. And then the other person who's recording, say if I'm recording with Craig, for example, I just use that story because it was pretty hilarious. So I will be recording straight here as I'm speaking and having a conversation. What I didn't mention is that here on the side, we've got Zoom. This is Zoom. We'll be having a Zoom call. So you need two devices. You'll be using a Zoom call. The other device will be your phone. Okay. So what you have with your phone, you record the audio on your phone. So you press audio record, put my phone down. And then I'll go on Zoom and I'll have earphones in. So as I'm speaking, so as you're speaking to me and you're having a conversation, at the same time, your phone is actually picking up the audio just from your side. And then when you do that at the end, Craig will send me the audio from his phone to me. And then once Craig has sent me the audio to my phone, well, then I will go and then I will combine the audios together, because we'll start at the same time and we'll end the recording at the same time. So all I will do, I just combine the two audios together. Then I'll just go in and edit it and cut the bits that I don't want and put things together. And then I will add some music as well down here. The music, you can download it from from YouTube for free. Doesn't cost anything. You can download music through there. So this is the process that I've been doing. If somebody can find a better way to to help or to give me some advice, that'll be grateful. I'm still trying to find a way to get out of this because it's time consuming, but I haven't figured out a better way to do that, to get the best quality as well. Because we can have a phone call, it wouldn't give the best quality. So I wanted to make it sound as if it was proper and real. And that was the best way I found to doing it. So you might find another method, but this is the way that I find it to work for me. Like I said, I love a script. So while I would do the script, I'll put everything on there, as you can see. And then I'll talk about the host and the discussion. So this is the main topic. So what I will do here, so there'll be a topic, and then I will go and do my little introduction. Then I'll put some questions here. So I will study the topic so here we're talking about the sacred and the common. So I'll put some questions that I want to ask the person, and then the person will look at this and they will study on the topic and they'll put their notes in here. And then so once they send it to me, I know what they're talking about. They know what I'm talking about. So when we come to recording, it's a lot more smoother because we know where we're going. So you want to kind of have a script to send to the people or to the guests that you invite. And then when you come together, it flows naturally. If you try to do off the back, you'll find that your podcast is going on for a long time and you don't know exactly which bit you want and what bit you don't want. So you want to have some kind of order to it as well. I can't see the question, but I will come back to that in a second. You want to also create a file where you have all your podcasting stuff. So right now I need to create a season 2 file. So all of the stuff for season 1 are in there. And so you want to create a file where you keep all your stuff as well. So the checklist when I record, since we can't meet up to record proper together. So there's a little checklist. And if I forget to do one of these things, it means the audio will not be so great and we'll have to resit and record the audio. So we have had to do that because I forgot to mention one of these checklists, and then the audio wasn't as good and there was background noise and all of that stuff. So I had to come and sit down again and do it again. Like I said, I am just literally going off what I know. I haven't really been able to find other methods that will probably work as well. Also, I see somebody's already suggesting some stuff for me to use, mixing and editing. I don't do anything to do with mixing, Andrea. I haven't looked into that, but that's something that I came across and I thought this thing is hard for me. But that's something also I look to go into. Okay, that is true. Okay. But yeah, so I'm looking into other means to make the things a lot more better. So I will definitely look into those. So here, I plan about an hour and a half to record their podcast. So my podcasts are not more than an hour. I think the last one was, but I'm trying to keep it about 45 minutes to 50 minutes kind of range. Because I can't imagine when somebody's driving, especially like a long journey, you don't want to listen to something more than a whole hour. So yeah. So somebody's also recommending Audacity as well. It's an easy and a free cross-platform. Excellent. So there's a few different ones that you can use to edit. Garageband for me was something that I used when I was in school. So it just became something that I could easily use. But there's other ones that you can definitely look into. So you want to plan a time about an hour and a half, depending how long you want your episode to be with the person that you're with your guest. 2 devices, as I mentioned. You want to use Zoom or you can use a phone call, but you want to make sure that you have headphones in so that the recording is straight, just captured by your phone or your other device. You want to close all the windows and doors. So you don't want any other background noise on the streets or anything like that. You want the place to be quiet as possible. So if you have clocks in the room, because you probably hear that as the person is speaking, you'll be hearing the clock ticking, and you don't really want that in the background. And headphones and earphones. And you want to have the microphone. So, we use phones. We literally use what we have. So it's my phone and the person's phone. And I'll put a phone about here. I probably want to stack it with something. So it's in that place. And I stay here, try to talk with it at the same time. And then I'm having I'm talking. So that's one way we're finding it to do it. And remember, it's not professional, okay? This is just something that I've done in my bedroom. So there's so much out there. I know that my church is working on some stuff to develop their communication department. So it's just something that you have. Like, I don't have money to be buying microphones, but I've been using my phone. So every episode you guys have heard, you will hear on there. There's 10 episodes on there, and they're not professional. They're just been off phones, all of them phones. So that's what I've been using as well. Avoid too much fillers. So that'd be another thing. Too much ums and ahs. That can kind of be a little bit too much repetitive in your podcast. So that can take your time to edit out as well. Okay, let me finish this thing. So this is pretty much our distributor. So once you recorded it, you want to put it on Anchor, which is my distributor. It's free. Doesn't cost me anything. It's an app. So I'll put it on there. And what I love about this, it kind of tells you where your podcast is being heard. So, different countries there. People somewhere in that country are probably clicked on my podcast. Kind of breaks down the people who are listening to it as well. And it kind of tells you the different devices that people uses to listen to it. You can see iPhone seems to come out at the top. So this gives you the statistics as well. So these are all the episodes there. Kind of tells you how many plays you've had on it. So it's actually really good and it's free. I've looked at other stuff. All of them pretty much ask you for a monthly subscription. And I said, I don't have money to pay for a monthly subscription. So you can see here the distributor, you can see it's got Spotify there. You want them to hit the most popular ones, which is Spotify and Apple. So if you can get your podcast on there, as you can see, Apple Podcast is also part of that. So once you press this, distribute, it goes to all of the platforms. And so that's also another advantage. You don't pay anything. and it does that for you essentially as well. So that's Anchor. That's what I use. It doesn't cost me anything, and it's pretty reliable as well. You can also record live on there, but it uses the internet, so you have glitches and cuts in there. It's never. I tried to use it. The quality of the audio wasn't really that great either. So that's what I use, Anchor. Once you've got your podcast on there and it's going, now you want to create a movement. You want people to share your content as well. So this bottom one here on the right, you can see this is Craig and I recording. I'm just in my room. I've literally attached my microphone to my little lantern. Craig has got his microphone also on his little lamp there. Just simple stuff. Nothing too expensive. I mean, I hope by God's grace to do things a lot more. Obviously, you want to do things with the best quality. But with the situation, I thought that would be the best way to get things done. So you got people sharing your content. These are the episodes so far that have been out. There's 10 of them. Focusing on that, delivered people's story, enlightening on people biblical topics, and ultimately to try to reach as many people as we can through that. So once it's on there, you can scroll down and look at some of the ones that are already on there and the day they were posted. So we used to release an episode every 2 weeks on a Monday. And that was it becomes quite hard to try to get all of those things to be done in the same time, especially being a one-man team as well. Trying to do the Canva stuff with the graphics and also doing the editing. So it is time consuming as well with that. So just some feedback that people have kind of said, which also kind of helps you as well to keep you going, I guess. If people are kind of commenting and giving you positive feedback on there, it really encourages you to keep it up. Here somebody says, I'm also hearing the podcast right now. It's so good. I need more episodes. I think that's after like 3 episodes have been released. So you're thinking, okay, I want to create more content because clearly people are finding it's a positive impact. I was totally blessed by your podcast. Thank you. Just messaging. I need to hear today. May God continue to bless your work. So these things just kind of helps you to be even more creative. But the biggest one that I was not expecting, when I listened to your podcast, I instantly liked it because you're a young Christian talking freely about God on a platform like Spotify. I've realized that everyone could listen to this, Christians or not, and I thought it was an amazing idea. I remembered, I was like, we should do something like this, but in French. And here we go. I did it. So because I listened to my podcast, this person went ahead and actually made a podcast in French. I mean, they're in Paris right now. It's called Parlo bien. So speak little, speak good. That's what it means. So, I mean, when they created this and they messaged me, I thought, wow, this is awesome. So just something that I was doing in my bedroom, I thought, God, I want to do something. And back to that Moses story. What do you have in your hands? I have my phone. Let's use your phone. I think I've never bought a mic. The mic that I have, Douglas has been the one buying the mics for me. My friend Douglas. He sees the microphone. He's like, I think this will be good for you. And then he buys the mic. I haven't bought any mic or any mix. I've just got my laptop and the microphone, and that's pretty much all I have on my phone. So even with the people, if I have a podcast with you, all you have is your phone, and that's all we're going to use. And we're going to try to make the background noise and cut it out as much as we can. So use your phones. Use what you have. If you can afford to use all the different stuff, by all means, go ahead. But you don't need all of that stuff to actually start. It costs you pretty much nothing. What's next for Deep? Season 2. We want to create some content for season 2, and we are looking into different stuff to do with that because we want to grow. We don't want to stay back where we were a year ago. We want to grow. So we're looking for some stuff to do with season 2 and still continue with our collaboration with the Insight blog to do whatever else it needs to be done. So it doesn't have to be just podcast, but find other ways to collaborate with people and do more things as well. In terms of our website, that's something also that to be thinking about, but we'll just see how things go forward, I guess. Any questions? I know that was quite speedy. I'm always obviously happy to share my experience with you guys. But if there's any questions, that is kind of what I had planned for you guys as well. David has got a question. Let me just get off this. Stop sharing. think there's a few things. Sorry, David, before I take your question, let me just go through these quickly. Do you have guests? Yes, I have guests on there. I think I said about that. It just makes the conversation a lot more real. You have what? Oh yeah, sorry guys, my WhatsApp was going off. What's the device for mixing and editing? I don't have mixing. I haven't looked into that much. I guess something to consider for season 2. Editing, there's Cochinta and Audacity, those things you can obviously use. I can recommend Audacity, it's easy, free. Yeah, so Audacity is also another one. So, go on YouTube. What I did to know how to use Garageband is that I went on YouTube and I just watched tutorials how to use it. So that's another way. If you never know how to use these different editing sites, just go on YouTube. People have done a lot of things already. So use what people have already done to help yourself as well. I wonder, can you cancel background noise with special headphones so you don't have to worry about outside noise? I think you can get better mics. So there's condenser mics that can they cancel every other noise around you, and they just pick up your mouth, your voice as it is directly before the microphone. So you can get definitely better microphones as well. In terms of you can't really do much about the noise outside. If there's so much noise outside, your mic can potentially pick that up as well. So some episodes we have had to go and do them twice. I remember Craig and I had to do our episode twice because as I was listening to it back, Israel was in the background running and screaming, "Daddy, daddy, daddy," like that. So I was like, "Ooh, Craig, this was an important point. I can't cut it out, so we might have to do it again." And we had to do it again. So yeah. So it's learning how to do those things properly. Is it possible to? It's possible, but it's hard work. Go easy road if you don't want a long hustle. Definitely. If you want to start off as well, you want to do as much as simple as possible, because you can get into it and there's a lot to it that you obviously. I'm just giving a little beginning kind of thing. There's a lot more into it as well. The reason I haven't started podcasts is because the cat in the background or grandma with Alzheimer's taking while I'm talking. But our friend suggested noise cancelling headphones so that the background noise won't be so heard. With that one, if you had a headset on, it doesn't really mean your microphone's you're not gonna pick up noise in the microphone because your microphone is still external to that. So what I'll suggest, maybe pick a different time where you can actually record. I've had to record quite late in the evening because that was the quietest time, and the person was willing to do that as well. Because if you have a guest as well, they've got work, etc. So you need to find a time that both suits you as well. But definitely you want to help yourself with that. I heard that you can use Anchor and have multiple people on podcasts. And how do you create RSS feed? Anchor does that for you with the RSS feeds. You just copy them and paste them wherever you need to. You can have multiple people on the podcast. Like I said, I've tried to use the internet way because it's through internet. And if people's internet is lagging, you're going to hear that in the podcast. If you guys listen to, I think is my second or third podcast. If you listen to that was recorded through Anchor app. And the quality isn't so great because it was an internet connection. So I did that and then I realized actually it's not the best quality. So that's why I resorted back to using just send me the audio file. I'm going to edit it. Because you can play with the volumes when you're editing yourself. You can put music on the stuff, but if you do it through Anchor, you can't exactly put music where you want. You can only put one track for the whole thing, and I didn't want that, so that's why I decided to edit it myself manually as well. Yeah. I don't know if there's any more questions. David has a hand. Yes, David. I don't know if I've answered your question.
Yes, short question. I have a podcast just running for quite some time. I decided against Anchor because I don't like the licensing, because like the licensing means basically it Spotify owns your podcast and I want to own my own podcast. So there's kind of like a point where I totally decided against it. But then cross-platform, like the advertising just doesn't work as good anymore. So you are like disadvantaged. And so my question would be like, have you ever advertised directly on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, which are the two biggest platforms, I think in the UK too. Like, did you posted any adverts or just like your own social media and circulating around?
Yeah, that's actually really good. Because that wasn't something that I was aware of. Thank you. So I'll have to look into that. But no, I mean the only advertising I do is, you know, on social media. But in terms of the actual podcast itself, I haven't done that.
So is that paid advertisement on social media, or is it just your account?
Oh, it would just be social, not paid. It would just be my own account.
Cool.
Yeah, but I have seen that you can, if you do an app and if you do a advertising for Anchor, they start to do like some kind of payments on there as well.
Yeah.
Which I haven't checked into. So yeah, so thank you. That's something that I need to look into, how to make it even more mine. Yeah, but that's, I guess, a conversation that I can have with David, and he can help me into that. Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Any other questions? Yeah, so how do you own your own podcast? That's a question that David maybe can help us on that, actually.
Yeah, so basically you can put up, for example, a WordPress site, or also like some other sites where use plugins, or you can also use other providers that would do it for you. In this cases, either you have like to maintain a server, which also need to be paid, or you just pay for another service. So in any case, you have some little costs. If you totally want to run for free, the thing that Ethan showed you is the correct one, because you basically have no cost except for your hardware and your timely work. If you want to own it yourself, meaning of license, what gets important when you want to have later on advertisement in your shows, or even do it like for branding. Like I'm doing it for my own business also. It's a health podcast. I would like to invite you all, but you need to learn German for this. In this part, it's kind of like just important for me to be in charge of it. And then you can just put it under Creative Commons license or whatever license you like.
Excellent. Yeah. So that's a way. Like I said, I didn't have money to kind of subscribe to these things, so that's why I kind of started with Anchor. But yeah, that's a really good shout, David. Thank you. That's something to look into. So if you want to own your own podcast and you want to start paying for it, for them to kind of help you with the growth of it, there's other way you can subscribe, and these guys will distribute it for you. But if you want to start off just, you know, something small, free, just out there, then Anchor is probably one of the best platforms to use as well. So you can always start and see how that goes, and take it from there. Yeah. I don't know if there's anything else.
Ethan, thank you. I think what I really love about what you're doing is, like, you know, a lot of people feel that you need to get all of this great equipment, you need to get ready to go, and then you start. You just started with what you had. And I like the quote that you used from the Bible, when God asked Moses what's in his hand, and he had the staff. God approaches you, you've got your phone, a bit more technology than what Moses had at that time. And God's able to do great things with what you're using. So really appreciate it. Thank you for the presentation. If anybody does have any more questions, please type them up. Now's the time. We've got another 10 minutes with Ethan, unless there are no questions and he gets to leave earlier than many of the other presenters that came on. Yeah. Ethan, I'm wondering, like, what's next for you now with the Deep podcast? Where do you want to go next with it?
So that's a really good question. Because I'm right now in my I've got 2 months to go before uni, and you know what that is like. Yeah. So right now, we're just thinking of how to kind of think about season 2. So different kind of programs. So we want to obviously continue to put more content out, and we want to kind of think of the best way to do that. Whether it's kind of forming a team, so the work is not so much. And yeah, so I mean, David there's idea is great, to branch it out. So at the minute, we're looking forward to do something for season 2, and we'll just see how God does that. But my goal has never been to just create. My goal has always been like, how can I create this? And somebody be like, wow, I want to know. And then bring them, even if it's just one person, just bring them out from that online social media and just connect through Bible study. So that's my goal. It's not to just put out content, but actually bring somebody And we've seen that. I mean, we're starting with 3 people at the moment, just because of the online stuff. And so that's my goal. My goal is not just create, but it's actually bring somebody to that personal relationship, if that makes sense.
So a questions come in. I can see Adrian's asked Ethan, have you ever considered WhatsApp for sharing your audios to, and possibly Telegram?
No, I haven't considered WhatsApp. I haven't considered WhatsApp, and I don't know how to use Telegram. Once again, these are great ideas that I need to explore. No, I haven't. Yeah.
Okay. So thank you for the question, Adrian. Well, if there's no other questions, Ethan.
I have another question before you let him go.
Okay, no worries, David. David, go ahead. And I think there's somebody else that suddenly I heard David.
I put a question down which said that ask whether there are ownership issues in regard to the content for the guests. You know, because obviously they've given their information. Are there any issues about copyright ownership? I don't know. I'm just asking, really. Is there anything they have to sign before they come on, you know, get recorded by you,
or in terms of the guest?
Yeah, in terms of your guests, yeah, and what they say about themselves, and whether you can use that information later on. Let's say you wanted to put together some leaflets or some tracks and stuff like that. Would you have to ask permission, or is that content that they've shared with you now yours, that you can do what you like with it?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. So everybody that I've kind of invited on my show has been people that I know personally. So it's been sort of, you know, if Craig was going to preach, that's already public. So if I was to invite him, it would just be more or less that. And the thing about it is that he will share stuff, and, you know, yeah, there'll be the question, are you okay? Everything that you gotta say in this place, are you okay for me to do that? And there's been time when I've recorded stuff and people have been like, oh, Ethan, I don't think that's actually, so before I post it, we have to go over it again and go through that. So everybody that we recorded with have given a consent that what they say, they know it's gonna go in a public place. They know that their name's gonna be going on Instagram and stuff like that. Yeah, so they are aware of what I'm doing.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I think David had a question.
Yeah, my question is about like maintaining, growing your community. And I don't know, like, if you've done it or if you're just too short into it, but there's some people that doing like live podcasts, like where they're inviting a crowd to the podcast while recording it. Of course, the quality always lacks, but for just maintaining people, it's a really great thing, probably not in COVID time. And on the other hand, there's always like that people that have podcasts inviting like other people from podcasts. So for example, Craig has a podcast and you have a podcast. You invite Craig to your podcast and Craig invites him to your podcast, and they're both speaking in the podcast about the other one. So you're sharing over it. And so my question on that would be like, is there like a network of Adventist podcasters? You said in the beginning there are some in the US, probably not so many in the UK, but are you aware that there's, I don't know, like a network, group, whatever?
Yeah. Actually, yeah, excellent. That is something that I've seen as well. You know, people have podcasts on and they invite people to come on. So I guess for me, I was heavily impacted by by Dean Collinane and Christian's podcast, because what they do is, so I guess if I kind of break down what we do is, so if we're going to talk about the sacred and the common is, we're going to look into the text. So we're literally having a Bible study online, well, for the podcast. And then at the end of that, I'll ask you, so how does understanding what we've just gone through impact you personally, and have this in experience in your life? And that'll be the podcast. So it hasn't been a case of let me invite people. It's just been like, we're having a Bible study actually, and then you're going to share a personal experience of how this has impacted you. So I remember that Craig and I did a podcast on Nehemiah, biblical leadership. And so we broke that down. And at the end of that, Craig gave the experience in ministry of being a leader. So that's always been our kind of template. So in terms of like inviting people on and giving things, I guess that idea hasn't grown yet. I am aware of there's the Undiluted World. There is Be Lit podcast as well, which obviously have a different kind of focus on it. But yeah, that'd be interesting to see how that can work. But yeah, it's once again, it's another idea that we can look into developing. Yeah. So yeah, thank you very much, David. So I guess the other thing that I would say on the podcasting, you want to know what your podcast is about, because if you don't, you are going to see other podcasts and you're going to be swinging left, right, and center. But you want to maintain the original template of your own podcast. Because once you start going left and right, it kind of loses what you had initially focused on. Which I think it's also good to have that kind of uniqueness about you. Yeah, but maybe that's something to do one day. Invite other podcasters on there to come and do like a little special episode. Who knows? Who knows? Yeah.
Well, like I said, as I was saying, Ethan, thank you. You know, you've taken this time to come and share this presentation, and I'm looking forward to seeing where the Deep podcast is going to go to. And I will always remember that first podcast that I had with you, and I don't look at my lampstand the same way ever again. It turned into a microphone stand that day. No, it's a privilege, and it's great to see what you're doing, because you know you're showing all of these just basics on what you do to make a podcast happen. You've had people donate things to you to help you to go forward, and I just think it just speaks to the point to just get something out there. If you've got something to share it. Start something, get something out there, and just do it. As Isela just wrote, just do it. Just get it out, and God will continue to really to grow it. And you know, I read a quote from somebody that I know. They said, your worst content might be your first content, but you keep producing the content, and it gets better as you keep going. What I really like about your podcast is that if you look on Instagram or wherever you're posting the information, it looks professional. You've branded it. It looks good. It's the same with all of the other ministries that I've seen and heard from today. The branding is important. So thank you. And endure to the end. Endure to the end with Deep. So I'd like to open with a word of prayer, and close this session with a word of prayer, and then we'll continue. Dear Lord, I thank you so much for the work that you're doing through Ethan with the Deep podcast. Father, what he said just resonates with me, and it just sticks in my mind. It's even calling out now. You're asking what's in the hand. What are we using? What's at hand for us to use right now? Moses had a rod. Ethan had a phone. What do we have? What do we have at hand to use for you? Sometimes we're waiting for some great thing to happen when you're waiting for us to just pick up what we have. So I pray in that, Lord, that you'll help us to do that, to pick up what we have, to use what is in our hands to bring glory to your name. Pray that you be with Ethan and the ministry of the podcast, and everybody else who's creating podcasts or is planning to. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.